Hey, we got Gary here.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. How you doing?
Good, good.
There he
Good
is.
to see y'all.
It's
Fantastic.
amazing to have you on.
We
Thanks for
we
coming.
wanted to
Or
have you
thanks
on
for
for a
having
bunch
me.
of reasons. I mean, thank you so much. It's fantastic to talk to you anytime. But it seems like YC is like completely transformed by LLMs writing code. So break it down.
Okay. I think we're just at the dawn of this technology, and um, it's the people who already know how to code who are taking the best advantage of it.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing the haters on the internet coming at us, but that's fine. Come at me, bro.
Love it.
Um, what's happening is that 100% of YC companies these days have technical co-founders,
Yeah.
and then you're stupid not to use it. Like basically, why would you subject yourself to spending a lot of hours on things that you don't have to do? And being able to go all the way to ground and debug the thing, and basically a prerequisite of using these tools well is that you don't need the tools.
Yeah.
That makes sense. How long do you think the sort of advantage that technical founders have in AI right now is going to be perpetual, or do you see a world in 5 years where the playing field has been completely leveled?
Um, you know, I still think like it's not like product doesn't matter or design doesn't matter. If anything, what it is it matters even more.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
the bar was lower before, the bar is much higher now. Like back then, if you go back like 10 or 15 years for startups, period, when I first worked at YC in 2011, almost anything that had really technical co-founders and a real problem, like you were going to be, at least a Series A company.
Yeah.
Like, and then I think that's become less and less true even today. Like, there are perfectly good, very technical teams that have all the skills and, are in pretty big problem spaces. And then there's competition, like the bar is just so much higher.
Yeah.
So I think the way to think about it is if you're not using it, you're actually leaving time and attention that could be used for all the other things that you're going to need in a perfect competitive world.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
so it's, all the people who are like, F vibe coders
Oh
or,
yeah.
all that. It's just like it's cope. It's
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
totally.
the
It'd be
world just
awesome to see
changed.
some
We're just trying to
stats.
help you.
Yeah,
And you
it'd be
live in that old world where, you're sitting there, writing your own manual tests and banging your head into
yeah.
the code, or you can embrace the future and, get that alpha, get that edge.
Talk
Yeah.
to us about how the bar has been raised from a metric standpoint. YC has always been about you have 3 months to make a tremendous amount of progress. It's really around preparing for demo day. The bar is all anytime you take hundreds of super talented people and put them under that pressure, they're going to produce amazing results. From a revenue standpoint, from a traction standpoint, it seems like the bar has jumped dramatically, but would love some more color there.
Yeah. I guess like YC, these like we've been really intentional about um, trying to go back to founders who are actually at right at the beginning. So, these numbers fluctuate, but pretty much every time, 70 to 80% of the companies have no revenue, and probably 70 to 80% generally are unlaunched. So. It's really during those 10 weeks, like, can you go from zero to, say, 100,000 or several $100,000 a year revenue? But even that is like, sort of secondary. Like, the funniest thing when you really think about it, think about a company that actually does make it to 100 million or $1 billion a year in revenue. Like, are you really going to look at the first 10 weeks and say, well, you went to, well, that company went to 50K ARR and that
Yeah.
other company went to 150K ARR. It's
Yeah.
like if you like play it all the way out, like it's all these other factors. So, I think basically if you can't get revenue or customers during the 10 weeks of YC, like man, that was the wrong idea, or you don't got the skills. And even then, like you can't count teams out. Like there are tons of
Yeah.
teams that deferred demo day, had
Yeah.
nothing, they took their money and basically nose to the grindstone, like stayed in the idea maze, and then they went on to create things like Retool. And these are things that everyone uses now. So,
Yeah.
Oh man,
uh,
retool. I
so
remember
yeah,
seeing
I
that
don't
at
know.
demo day.
It's wild.
Passed on
Yeah,
it.
my
Worst.
favorite joke on the show is that like the way to outperform as an LP is to travel back in time and just give John as much money as possible to invest in his early first and second YC
I
batch.
remember, yeah, I remember being at demo day with Retool and being like, that company looks cool, but I don't even know what I would say to them because I didn't realize you could just like, yeah, just invest. Anyway, we've had this thesis. Obviously, like YC, anything successful attracts like haters. We've had this thesis that YC is like entering like a renaissance, like with the AI stuff. Like this is the best time to be running like the YC business model. But can you talk a little bit about specifically like, do you think about yourself running YC in founder mode? And can you talk about
Oh,
like what
definitely.
that means and what you're doing and what's changing and how you want to take it to like the next level?
Of course, man. I mean, some of it is like I'm trying to do founder mode, but shout out to the original GOAT, Paul Graham,
Yep.
like and Jessica Livingston and Robert Morris and Trevor Blackwell, like
Yeah.
I'm tr I it turns out, you don't have to be the founder to try to run the founder mode playbook. And
Totally.
Brian Chesky himself is on my board. And when I came back to YC, the first thing he said was, "All right, well, if you were the founder, what's zero-based accounting? Like, what are you going to do?"
Yeah.
And there are shades of that in what Elon's doing with the US government. Like, I think I just stepped in it by bringing that up. But hey, like, you know
Right.
what? This is actually how you should be a leader. Like, you
Yeah.
actually have to think about things from first principles, from zero-based accounting. Like, if knowing what we know now, would we do that thing that we're doing? And, the enemy of every bureaucracy is, thinking,
Yeah. So
like,
what are the
just
biggest
thinking, decision
changes you've
making, like
made?
doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So I think YC was always the like center, the sort of like tree of prosperity.
Totally.
I left and spent 7 years in my 7 years in the wilderness running initialized, and
That's great.
feel I built an amazing team. Those guys are doing awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I realized that actually, if I stayed at initialized and didn't come back and heed the call of Paul and Jessica to right the ship at YC, uh, I would be out of a business. I at
Totally.
initialized would have been out of business if YC itself was not going in the right direction. And here we are. Like, I think that we're doing it and we're going to keep doing it. And the biggest thing that it's just funny that founder mode was the meme that was born at the alumni
Yeah.
top alumni conference, and Brian Chesky didn't even he wasn't even like scheduled to appear, and I just kept texting him because he would always come to the YC batch and give his it's funny for him. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna tell the selling cereal story,
Yeah.
and he's so generous with his time. He does that every single time. But I remember seeing him extremely animated, telling his not his 0 to 1 story, but his like save the company pre-IPO story, where he had to nobody believed in him, COVID was happening,
Yeah.
and then he just buckled up. He's like, look, I made a lot, he admits like he made a bunch of different mistakes that the reason why at the top alumni event that he spoke at, that was such a like pivotal moment. I think that we brought together about 200 of all of our top founders. There were about 60 or 70 unicorns represented. And I think that we unlocked, easily 10 to $100 billion in new market cap like that very night
Let's
because
Amazing.
there's just people who you know, there is a machine in Silicon Valley, and it's not unintentional. It's not malicious. Like, our corporate governance and Delaware C Corps are designed boards are like designed to maximize shareholder value.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a bunch of advice that people along the way tell you that like are self-serving. that
Yeah.
cause you to do the wrong things. Like you hire people who did it at a big company before, and then you're supposed to do it that way. And it's like, no, no, like, well, maybe, like, there are some things like maybe finance and accounting that you shouldn't innovate on, right? And you innovate a little bit too much there and you go to jail.
Yeah.
Um, you but
But
then
Well,
apparently
hey,
you can
product
do
yeah, you can do.
engineering, like,
podcasting and
I don't know,
tweeting
like
from
keep your
jail
wits
now.
about you, be founder mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Jordy, what you got?
what do you say to people that want to put YC in a box, right? You guys have had some high profile, hard tech, deep tech launches recently that seem like amazing companies. And there's pushback from people that almost want to say, you guys are,
Yeah.
it's like obviously completely BS because there's a long history.
And the guy who's
but-
running the place was at Palantir. Like
Yeah.
you shouldn't be surprised that there's defense
Yeah.
tech coming out of this thing once Gary takes over.
Yeah,
Support
That's my take.
Americans.
I don't know. I don't want to
Support
answer
America.
you, but
Five Eyes.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we have strong opinions here around
Yeah.
why this is great because if you're a super bright, engineer or technologist and you want to build something, YC can teach you how to build, a company. You have to build your product and sort of own your market. But yeah, what do you say to people that want to put YC, in a box and say stick with SaaS, stick with software?
Oh man, I mean YC was never just SaaS,
Yeah.
I mean Boom is has Astranis is right across the street. They're
Yeah.
like getting satellites up there. Albedo Labs, like I mean Albedo is super hardcore because they basically have made spy satellites, but they're better than what the U.S. government can do, and they might just replace that market for that. It's just nuts. Like
awesome.
this is a small team out of Colorado, uh, putting satellites up that are better than like the entire government waste machine. It's like not, I guess in some respects, like it's not that surprising actually.
Didn't
So,
Oklo go through? They're a nuclear company.
yeah, we got nuclear companies. We got,
crazy.
Public.
Helion's a fusion
Yeah.
company. I get it. You know what? Like, I think that it's a weird thing to sort of deal with for me because I always think of myself as the little guy, but I got to realize like, hey, I get it. Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna take the arrows and it's fine. We're just gonna keep helping founders. And the reality is like, hey, uh, you know, actually, like I want to shout out the Gundo Bros. I want to be like, you know what? Like you guys keep doing your thing. Like
Yep.
you're always welcome at YC. Like,
Yep.
but I know there was like a little bit of X beef, but there shouldn't be, like, like
I
I think
actually don't
Augusta's
see
coming
it
on,
as,
right? Like,
the
love that
challenge.
guy.
The challenge with YC is for every 200 founders you let in, you got to reject a bunch of people, right? Because there's just not enough space and not everybody's sort of qualified or it's not the right sort of moment. But the ultimate evidence of the value of YC is that you have highly, highly successful founders that go back for a second time, right?
Totally.
And so whenever I see drama on the timeline about YC, it's never coming from people that have experienced the product, right? It's always coming from, people that just really aren't live players, right? Like people that aren't really
True.
in the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So yeah, be a player character, man. And if your player character is just like, you don't gotta be like that.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about just long-term trends in making hardware a viable startup at the 500K investment level? I mean, when I went through IC, there was this whole like hardware is hard. It was always like, oh, it's going to be so capital intensive. And yet I think we're
Absolutely.
seeing people do the YC model. And yeah, you're probably not going to be shipping 1 million units of, whatever boat you're building on demo day. Like you could serve 1 million customers if you're building a social networking app.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the reason why hard tech at YC can happen is like, I mean, kind of even going back to what we were talking about earlier, like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily just about, SaaS, did you grow 10% week on week? Like, did you hit 100K ARR? Like that's, sort of weak, like spreadsheet thinking. And the hard tech companies that do super well, they show up with like, if you had a super crack team that was the team to do this, what would they be able to get done in 10 weeks? And sometimes it's a prototype, sometimes it's a demo. Like, the other thing is I have more than $1 billion a year in capital that's basically just like hard allocated to YC companies, not from us, from like,
Yeah.
hundreds
network.
of
Yeah.
VCs who now are all coming back to demo day in droves. And name me another place that has that actually. Like, and they're not necessarily just like doing the plug and chug. Like, they are actually meeting the founders. They're actually making up their own minds. They are, and they're funding hard tech. I think we're about 90% AI, and the age of intelligence is here.
Mm.
Dude, like the machines are able to do all knowledge work. Like that's insane.
Crazy.
And then simultaneous to that, like I'm really excited about our hard tech stuff because that's, I mean, that's the built world. Like, how do we actually create prosperity and abundance for one another? And God knows in America we need it. Like
Yeah.
we can't even make screws for ourselves. It's nuts, right?
Yeah.
I just saw Balaji in
Okay.
December in Singapore, and he like super black pilled me on
Oh no.
American manufacturing. We need,
Oh
a
no.
1000x what we have right now. And it's not that we're missing capital. It's not even that
Yeah.
we're missing uh, intelligence or people, right? Like it's the will. Like we have to
Yeah.
have the will to do it.
Yep.
And so my message to everyone watching is like if you're thinking about it, like YC is a great place to be. It's not the only place, right? But
Yeah.
like we think we're trying to build, one of the best places. And it is for AI, it's for software, it's for all kinds of technology. We are, building abundance from here, and we want to find the people who believe that stuff. It's like let's leave all the political crap on the side. Like that's not what's important. What's
Yeah.
important is we're at the dawn of just like unbelievable innovation,
It's
and
amazing.
all the world's like being rewritten by code and atoms, and what what brushstroke, what line of code, what will you bring? What, yeah,
It's
what
great.
hardware will you build?
Talk to us about Happenstance. I've seen probably like 10 or 20 posts from you about the company. It seems to be a personal favorite. Like I'd love to hear the pitch, from you directly.
Yeah, I mean, I just use it a lot personally. I mean, I get
Yeah.
hit up for I was thinking about how Sam Altman, when he had my role here at YC, he used to have like basically a team of EAs, and his email wasn't, I think it wasn't even Sama, it was SA-router. And it
Yeah,
was sort
that's
of
right.
a nod to basically what I feel like I am now. Like I
Yeah.
get, dozens of requests every day from all kinds of YC founders and, people I've run across. And that's pretty cool. I relish the ability to be like a shelling point for people who believe in tech.
Mm.
And then the best thing I can do is like, oh yeah, know-how, like capital, like it's human capital, all these things. Like people are recruiting, they're trying to sell, like if I think they are legit, I can basically it's the purest form of creating value from information, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
happenstance just happens to be that thing for me. The world is way too big. Like my world now is, I think I have like 11,000 contacts in my phone or something. It's like I like always
Yeah.
I always break Apple. Like Apple, my iPhone cannot support 11,000
Are
contacts.
you are you an inbox zero guy, or do you just give up and try to make
I
sure
just
you
give
get back?
up. It's a
Yeah,
river
You
yeah.
that I
give
I
up.
dip
figured.
into.
I
So if
figured.
someone's waiting for an email from me, right, I don't know,
I'm sorry.
you might have to
He's
hit
on
me again.
TBPN.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come ask the question in the chat. One more question for you. You put out a YC's famous for your request for startups list. Wanted to highlight one specifically that you had called out, which was a secure AI app store. We want a new kind of AI app store, an OS layer that sits on your computer or phone.
Mm.
It should protect user data, offer one shared memory, help users find the best AI apps, and help developers build and handle payments. Talk a little bit more about that. Are you seeing, teams in that space yet that you're excited about, or is this, coming down the pipeline,
I
hopefully?
think it's coming down the pipeline. Yeah, in full transparency, I don't know if found one that like really quite fit my,
Mhm.
on my end yet. It also might just be too early.
Yeah.
The tricky thing is it's pretty clear that OpenAI, Anthropic, and Windows, Apple, iOS, Android, like this is sort of how the OS almost inevitably will work, assuming that people still make software. Um, and it's just it's more like a thought exercise. Like I think it is possible for someone to do this right now, and we'll see if it happens. We're on the lookout.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of Gundo Bros, you wanted to give a shout out to the Gundo
Shout
Bros.
out.
We got Augustus joining next.
Great to see you,
wanted
brother.
say it's a party on this show. One person after another. Well, thank you so much
Gary,
for
thank you
joining,
so
Gary.
much.
We'll have to have you back, talk more soon. It's
Anytime.
always a pleasure chatting. And hopefully we'll see you at YC Demo Day.
All right.
Yeah, and
Sounds
look
great.
out for application, tbpn.com.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you doing
First
media
media
companies?
company.
Where's the...
We're
yeah.
in there.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah,
Take care,
have a
guys.
great day, Gary. We'll talk to
See
you
ya.
soon.